3 minutes after the final hymn ended, my stepson leaned close enough for me to smell the peppermint he always carried when he was nervous. "You may as well start packing," Brent whispered, smiling toward the people leaving the chapel. "Dad left everything to me. You get nothing." My husband's casket was less than 20 feet away. Brent expected tears. Perhaps he expected me to make a scene large enough to confirm every ugly thing he had said about me during the final months of his father's life. Instead, I straightened the black sleeve of my dress and said, "Then you have nothing to worry about." His smile widened because he mistook restraint for defeat. I already knew James's will named his son as beneficiary of his estate. What I did not know was what James had placed in the fourth folder at his lawyer's office. Neither did Brent. But Brent had signed what was inside it. I was 69 when James died. We had been married for 17 years, long enough for the maple trees outside our Ohio home to grow from narrow young trunks into branches that shaded most of the front porch. James had been widowed before we met. I had been divorced for nearly 15 years and had no children of my own. His son, Brent, was 27 when James introduced us. Brent was polite at first, but never warm. He called me Margaret after everyone else began calling me Maggie. At our wedding, he toasted his father for finding companionship, as though I were a pleasant woman hired to keep the evenings from becoming too quiet. I understood some of his resistance. His mother, Patricia, had died after years of cancer treatment. She was woven into every room of the house where James had raised him. I never wanted to replace her. I only wanted permission to exist beside her memory. That was the first mistake I carried into the family. I believed permission was something Brent had the right to grant. His daughter, Sophie, never made me earn it. She was 6 when James and I married. After I taught her to make my mother's apple cake, she began calling me Grandma Maggie. Brent corrected her once. "Maggie is fine," he said. Sophie looked at me. "You can call me anything kind," I told her. After that, she called me Grandma when her father was not listening. Before marrying James, I had spent more than 30 years in bank operations. I reviewed account procedures, loan records, and the small discrepancies people ignored until they became expensive problems. James used to say I could find a missing decimal point from across a crowded room. I told him missing decimal points had destroyed more lives than most criminals. He owned Hale Home and Garden, a local hardware store his father had started. A few years into our marriage, a national chain opened nearby, and the store began losing ground. James considered selling the building. Instead, I sold my condominium and invested a large portion of the proceeds into modernizing the business. We added contractor delivery, online ordering, a small warehouse, and seasonal workshops. An independent accountant valued the existing company, and an attorney prepared a new operating agreement. My investment gave me 55% ownership. James retained 45%. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was given to me as a favor. The house was handled separately. James refinanced it several years later and placed both our names on a survivorship deed. "This is Maggie's home too," he told Brent at dinner. "If I go first, she stays." Brent set down his fork. "That house was Mom's." "It was our family home," James said. "Now it is Maggie's home too." "You said things would stay in the family." James looked directly at him. "Maggie is my family." I should have let the silence remain. Instead, I asked Sophie about school. For years, I softened every difficult moment between father and son. I told myself I was protecting their bond. In truth, I was teaching Brent that if he created enough discomfort, I would remove it for him. James did the same thing with money. Brent owned a remodeling company. When he lost a major contract, James loaned him enough to cover payroll. Later, he paid off a commercial vehicle, advanced money for materials, and helped when Brent's credit line was threatened. The first loan was an emergency. The second was called temporary, By the 5th, rescue had become part of Brent's business plan. I urged James to document the larger amounts. He did, though he hated asking his son to sign promissory notes. "We're family," Brent complained during one meeting. Naomi Price, our attorney, looked at him over her glasses. "Family members benefit from clarity more than strangers do." Brent signed. He made several payments, then stopped. James knew the pattern was unhealthy, but guilt weakened every boundary he tried to set. Patricia had been sick through much of Brent's adolescence. James believed he had failed his son by spending too many nights at the hospital and too many weekends keeping the store alive. Brent knew how to reach that guilt. He brought old photographs. He reminded James of missed baseball games. He spoke about employees who would lose their jobs if his company failed. Some of his fear was real. That was what made him difficult rather than simple. Brent loved his father. He also believed that love should protect him from every consequence. When James was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, the illness sharpened everything that had been left unresolved. At first, Brent helped. He drove James to appointments, repaired a porch railing, and sat beside him during infusions. I was grateful. Then his questions changed. He wanted account passwords, insurance files, ownership records, and details about the house deed. He asked whether the operating agreement could be simplified so the business would pass directly to him. One afternoon, I found him in James's study, holding the blue company binder. He closed it too quickly. "Looking for something?" I asked. Dad wanted the vendor list. "The vendor list is at the store." He gets confused. "Not about his business." Brent placed the binder on the desk. "You don't see him the way I do. I see him every morning and every night. I'm his son. And I'm his wife." It was one of the first times I said it without lowering my voice afterward. That evening, James asked me to place the original company documents in Naomi's fireproof cabinet. Copies remained at home. It was my first clear decision during his illness. I stopped assuming that good intentions were enough protection. 2 weeks later, Naomi came to the house to review our estate documents. The house would pass to me under the recorded deed. My ownership in the company would remain mine. James's 45% interest would be purchased by the company after an independent valuation, and the money would go into his estate. His will left the probate estate to Brent. That arrangement did not offend me. James had always intended his son to inherit the value of what James personally owned. During the meeting, I stepped into the kitchen to make coffee. Through the open doorway, I heard Naomi say, "Your will still names Brent as the beneficiary." Brent had arrived unexpectedly and was standing in the hall behind me. He heard it too. I saw the relief move across his face. He did not remain long enough to hear Naomi continue. "But the estate must still account for enforceable debts, expenses, and the separate agreements you asked me to prepare." Brent left before coffee was poured. Later, James spent nearly 2 hours alone with Naomi. When she departed, she carried a thick stack of notes. "What did you decide?" I asked him. He looked tired. "That I should have listened to you sooner." "That does not answer my question." "It will." I respected his privacy and did not press. After his death, I wondered whether that had been respect or another form of avoidance. During James's final month, Brent became insistent that his father sign a new power of attorney, naming him. "You need someone who understands the family business," he said one afternoon. I was in the kitchen, but his voice carried. "Maggie understands it better than either of us," James replied. "She is going to sell it the minute you're gone. Her money kept it open. That doesn't make it hers. Her ownership agreement does." Brent left angry. A week later, Sophie visited alone. She was 21 and studying occupational therapy. She sat beside James for an hour, telling him about her internship. Before leaving, she found me on the porch. "Dad says you're changing Grandpa's will." "I'm not. He says Grandpa isn't thinking clearly." Your grandfather met privately with his doctor and his attorney. Sophie looked toward the house. Dad is scared. So am I. He thinks you'll take everything. I will protect what belongs to me. I will not take what belongs to your father, and I will never use you to punish him. Her eyes filled. He keeps talking about my tuition like Grandpa has to help him because of me. Your education is not a bargaining tool. That promise to protect Sophie without making her responsible for her father became the line I refused to cross. James died on a Tuesday morning in October. The night before, rain tapped softly against the windows. Near dawn, he opened his eyes and asked whether the store's Christmas trees had been ordered. They were ordered last month, I told him. Good. Then he asked about the porch light. I bought the bulb. I haven't climbed the ladder. Ask someone. I will. He squeezed my fingers. Maggie, don't leave the store because of him. I won't make decisions out of anger. That isn't what I said. Despite everything, I smiled. No, it isn't. You built a life there too. Those were the last clear words he spoke. At the funeral home, Brent controlled every detail he could reach. He replaced the photograph I had selected because it included me. He instructed the funeral director to introduce him as James's only family representative. In the first obituary draft, I was described as James's longtime companion and business associate. I corrected it before publication. Brent accused me of making his father's death about myself. Listing a wife as a wife is not vanity, I said. By the day of the funeral, I had slept perhaps 9 hours total. I remember lilies, black coats, strangers squeezing my hands, and the peculiar cruelty of hearing James discussed in the past tense. Then Brent leaned close after the final hymn. You may as well start packing. Dad left everything to me. You get nothing. He believed the sentence he had overheard at the house told him the whole story. I looked at him and understood something I had resisted for 17 years. Brent was not waiting to learn whether I belonged. He had already decided I did not. Then you have nothing to worry about, I said. The next morning, Linda Perez, our bookkeeper, forwarded me an email from Brent. He had identified himself as the new owner of Hale Home and Garden. He instructed her to suspend payments requiring my approval, prepare a list of bank accounts, and schedule a staff meeting where he would announce the transition. I called him. You do not own the company. I inherited Dad's share. No appraisal has occurred, and his interest does not transfer management authority to you. You don't know what the will says. I know what the company agreement says. You always hide behind paperwork. I prefer it to inventing authority. He hung up. 2 hours later, Linda called again. A locksmith was at the store. I drove there with a certified copy of the operating agreement. Brent was standing beside the loading entrance with 2 employees and a man carrying tools. I'm changing Dad's office lock, he said. You are not authorized to change any lock. That office contains family property. It contains company records. I showed the locksmith my identification and the page naming me as the surviving managing member until James's interest was valued and purchased. The locksmith packed his equipment. Brent's face darkened. You planned this. We signed that agreement 8 years ago. You planned for him to die. We planned so neither of us would leave the other with a business crisis. He stepped closer. You think because your name is on some forms, you can take what my father built. Several employees were listening. I could have recited the amount I invested. I could have described the years I worked without taking full distributions. I could have explained how close the store had come to closing. Instead, I said, Go home, Brent. We will discuss the estate with Naomi. He pointed toward the office. I want Dad's things. You will receive his personal property after it is inventoried. You don't trust me? That question would once have sent me searching for a gentler answer. No, I said, not with unrecorded property. He left without saying goodbye. That afternoon, Linda and I updated the company's banking access and documented every account, pending payment, inventory order, and outstanding customer balance. We did not immediately close Brent's contractor account. I wanted facts before consequences. The first figures Linda showed me were troubling. Brent's company owed the store far more than I expected. Several purchases had been divided across project names or credited against payments that never arrived. Some transactions had been approved using James's login during weeks when he was too ill to work. Could James have given him the password? I asked. Linda hesitated. Mr. Hale kept passwords in a notebook. Does the system prove who entered the orders? No. Then we do not accuse anyone yet. We printed invoices, delivery records, access logs, and email confirmations. Several deliveries listed Brent's home instead of a worksite. One included imported tile Carla had shown me in photographs of their remodeled bathroom. Then Linda found an email James had sent 3 months earlier. Stop extending new credit to Brent without written authorization. Below it was Brent's reply. Dad is not himself. Keep processing my orders like usual. I'll straighten this out when I take over. I read the last 4 words twice. When I returned home that evening, James's photograph from our 15th anniversary stood on the living room shelf. In it, he was laughing because the wind had blown my hat into a rose bush. For years, I had treated memories like that as private evidence of belonging. I had never imagined I would need to defend my place in my own marriage. I sat on the sofa and allowed myself to ask the question I had avoided. Had 17 years of patience changed anything? The answer was painful but clarifying. My marriage had been real whether Brent honored it or not. I did not need to win admission into a family room I had helped build. The next morning, I met Naomi. She placed 4 folders on the table. I cannot complete the estate accounting yet, she said. The appraisal has not been finished, and there are debt records the accountant must verify. She opened the first folder and showed me the will. As I expected, James left his probate estate to Brent, subject to estate obligations. The second contained the house deed. The third contained the company agreement. Naomi rested her hand on the 4th folder, but did not open it. James executed an additional agreement concerning Brent's debts, she said. Brent had separate counsel. Before I tell either of you what it means financially, I want every figure independently confirmed. How large is the debt? Large enough that I will not estimate. Did James forgive it? No. I looked at the closed folder. Did Brent sign? Yes. That was all she would say until the accounting was complete. I left knowing there was something substantial inside the folder, but not whether it would reduce Brent's inheritance, erase it, or create a larger dispute. Brent did not wait for answers. Within 10 days, he challenged my appointment as executor. He alleged that James lacked capacity when he signed his final documents. He claimed I had isolated his father, controlled access to him, and manipulated the business to disinherit an only son. The filing did not take away my home or my ownership, but it delayed the estate and placed accusations about me into a public record. Carla called one evening. Brent is barely sleeping, she said. So am I. You still have the house and the store. That does not mean I still have my husband. He feels like you're taking his whole life. I am protecting the company and following signed agreements. James would not want the family destroyed over money. It was a sentence I had heard in different forms all my life. It was always directed toward the person expected to surrender, never toward the person creating the harm. Neither do I said. But pretending a debt never existed is not peace. Sophie stopped visiting the store. Her messages remained polite but brief. I understood that she was caught between people she loved, yet her absence hurt more than I admitted. For several days, I considered offering Brent money simply to make the accusations disappear. The temptation frightened me because it felt familiar. Once again, I was preparing to sacrifice truth to reduce his discomfort. Then Naomi called. "Sophie contacted me," she said. "She wants to provide a statement." My first reaction was refusal. I promised not to use her against him. She is not offering an opinion about the inheritance. She witnessed a conversation relevant to James's capacity and Brent's pressure. I agreed to meet Sophie with Naomi present. Sophie sat at the conference table twisting a silver ring around her finger. "I don't want Dad to know I came," she said. "I will not ask you to choose sides. I already chose one thing." "What?" "The truth." During her last visit with James, Brent had called while she was in the room. He told James that unless he signed the new power of attorney, Sophie might have to leave school because Brent could no longer cover expenses. James told him clearly that Sophie's education fund was already protected and that he would not sign authority over the company. Sophie had heard every word. "Grandpa knew what day it was," she said. "He asked about my clinical placement and corrected me when I mixed up 2 dates. Dad kept saying he was confused, but he wasn't." Her statement would not decide the case by itself, but it mattered. More importantly, Sophie had acted without becoming anyone's weapon. I reached across the table. "You did not betray your father by telling the truth." She swallowed. "It feels like I did." Truth often feels cruel when a family has depended on silence. The investigation continued. James's doctor documented that he understood his affairs during the period in question. The attorney who represented Brent during the debt negotiations confirmed that Brent had reviewed the terms and requested changes before signing. Linda and the accountant traced the major loans into Brent's company accounts. Then we found the complication I had feared. One large materials order processed under James's credentials appeared suspicious, but an old voicemail proved that James had approved it after Brent promised to repay within 30 days. He had broken his promise, but he had not stolen that order. Other transactions remained uncertain. Naomi said we could argue that Brent had probably entered them himself. "Probably is not enough for me," I said. "Excluding them reduces the claim." "Then the claim should be smaller." The amount we removed was significant. It would have strengthened the estate's position if included. But I had spent my career watching people turn suspicion into certainty because certainty was more convenient. I would not do that, even to someone who had humiliated me beside my husband's casket. That was the point at which the struggle stopped being about defeating Brent. It became about refusing to become inaccurate in order to feel powerful. The company appraisal took nearly 3 months. Naomi proposed mediation before the court challenge moved further. By then, the independent accountant had completed the debt review. Naomi called me the evening before the meeting. "The 4th folder is ready to be presented," she said. "Do you know the final number?" "Yes." "Tell me." She paused. "I think James intended both of you to hear it in the same room." Part of me disliked that answer. I was the executor and James's wife. I had spent months carrying the practical consequences. But I also understood what she meant. The folder was not a private gift to me. It was James's final accounting with his son. The mediation took place on a grey February morning. Brent arrived with Carla and his attorney. He wore a navy suit James had bought him years earlier. The sleeves were slightly too long now. Grief and worry had thinned him, but the old confidence returned when he saw the folders. Before sitting, he looked at me. "You could have avoided all this." "So could you." The mediator asked everyone to remain constructive. Naomi opened the first folder. "This is James Hale's will," she said. "It leaves his probate estate to his son, Brent Hale, subject to administration expenses, lawful claims, and enforceable offsets." Brent leaned back. "Exactly. Dad wanted me to have everything." Naomi did not argue with him. She opened the second folder. The residence was owned by James and Margaret Hale under a recorded survivorship deed. It did not become part of the probate estate. Mrs. Hale became sole owner at her husband's death. Brent's jaw tightened. That was her idea. The file contains written instructions from your father to the title company. Naomi opened the third folder. Hale Home and Garden is owned through a limited liability company. Mrs. Hale owns 55% based on her documented capital contribution. James Hale owned 45%. Under the agreement, the company purchases the deceased member's interest at an independently appraised value. The heir receives the financial value through the estate, not management control. Brent looked toward his attorney. So, I still receive Dad's share. You receive whatever remains of the estate after its obligations are applied, Naomi said. He glanced at me. That will be enough to buy her out. No, I said. It will not. You don't know that. I know I am not selling. His attorney touched his arm, but Brent pulled away. You never cared about that store until Dad got sick. The accusation was designed to pull me into proving myself. I did not. Your father knew what I contributed, I said. I no longer require you to agree. Naomi placed her hand on the fourth folder. The room became still. When she opened it, she removed a consolidated promissory note, a repayment agreement, correspondence from Brent's former attorney, and the accountant's verified schedule. Brent's signature appeared on the final page. I saw the balance before Naomi spoke. $298,400. For a moment, I thought I had misread it. Naomi slid copies across the table. 4 months before his death, James Hale consolidated the unpaid personal and business loans made to Brent Hale. Brent was represented by independent counsel. The agreement states that if James died before repayment, the outstanding balance could be deducted from any inheritance Brent received from his estate. Brent did not touch the paper. My father said he would forgive it. Do you have a later written cancellation? Naomi asked. He was my father. That is not a cancellation. He would never leave me with nothing. The word settled over the table. Nothing. The same word he had used at the funeral. Naomi continued. The independently appraised value of James's company interest, combined with his remaining probate assets and reduced by estate expenses, is slightly less than the verified debt balance. Carla covered her mouth. I stared at the signature. I had known there was a debt agreement. I had not known the amount, and I had not understood how completely it would consume what Brent expected to receive. Brent turned toward me. You did this. No, I said. You signed it. Because he pressured me. Your lawyer negotiated the payment schedule. I thought Dad would tear it up. He gave you months to make payments. I was trying to save my company. So was he. His face flushed. You are enjoying this. I looked at him across the 4 folders and felt no triumph at all. No, I said. I am finally refusing to call rescue love. His expression changed. For 1 second, I saw not the man who had threatened me at the funeral, but the frightened son James had spent years trying to save. Then Brent looked down again. What about Sophie's tuition? Protected in a separate education trust, Naomi said. It is not part of this estate and cannot be used to satisfy your debts. Brent looked at me. You could still try to control it. I will not take Sophie's future to pay for your choices. He glanced toward Sophie's written statement in the evidence packet. You brought her into this. She brought the truth, I said. I did not ask her to lie for either of us. The mediator called a break. In the hallway, my hands began trembling. Naomi noticed. Are you all right? I will be. You did not know the amount. No. James was trying to make the consequence come from Brent's own agreement. I understand. Does that help? Not yet. After 20 minutes, we returned. Brent's attorney spoke first. They would withdraw the challenge if the final accounting matched the figures, if James's personal belongings were released promptly. And if the estate agreed not to pursue any remaining amount beyond the inheritance offset, I had already considered those terms. I added conditions of my own. Brent would stop representing himself as the owner or successor of Hale Home and Garden. He would return company records and remove the Hale store name from advertisements for his remodeling business. He could retrieve his stored materials from our warehouse within 60 days. Future purchases, if any, would be prepaid, like those of any customer with a closed credit account. I also agreed not to pursue the questionable transactions we could not prove. Naomi looked at me. You understand the estate may have stronger remedies. I understand. I want protection, not endless punishment. Brent did not apologize. I did not require him to. An apology offered only to secure a settlement would have been another signature without meaning. The agreement was completed over the following weeks. Legal matters did not resolve with the clean speed people expect from stories. Notices were issued, claims periods expired, tax documents were prepared. The company began paying the value of James's interest to the estate, where the payments were applied against Brent's debt. Brent received James's truck, his grandfather's watch, family photographs, an old baseball glove, and the tools James had marked for him. I packed each item myself. Inside the metal toolbox, I found a folded note in James's handwriting. Brent. Tools only work when you maintain them. Families are not so different. Dad. I considered removing it. Then I left it exactly where James had placed it. Brent collected the belongings after business hours. He did not enter the store. 2 employees helped load the truck. Before leaving, he walked toward me. I suppose this is what you wanted. No. What did you want? For your father to die believing you could survive without another rescue. He flinched. The sentence was painful, but it was true. He looked toward the store sign. Are you changing the name? No. Why keep it? Because your father built the first part, I built the next part, and 30 people still earn their living here. The name belongs to more than this argument. He nodded once and drove away. For the next 8 months, we had no personal contact. That distance mattered. Brent's remodeling company did not survive. The debt to us had not caused its failure. The company had been losing money for years, and James's loans had only delayed the reckoning. Brent sold equipment, closed his office, and accepted a project management position with a commercial contractor. Sophie did not repair our relationship for him. She visited me, but she refused to carry messages between us. I love both of you, she told him. That does not make me responsible for fixing what you broke. I was proud of her. She returned to her weekend shifts at the store during school breaks. One afternoon, an older customer saw us pricing garden tools and asked whether she was my granddaughter. Sophie answered before I could. Yes. The word was simple, public, and unafraid. For years, I had believed belonging would arrive when Brent finally granted it. Instead, it arrived in moments he could not give or remove. The estate closed 11 months after James died. On the first anniversary of his death, we opened a workshop room at the back of the store. James had always wanted a place where retired tradespeople could teach basic home repairs to younger homeowners. We named it the James Hale Workshop. I invited Brent by mail because invitations should be clear and should not demand forgiveness. He did not attend. 3 months later, I received a short letter. Maggie. I have read Dad's note more than once. I am not ready to explain everything I did because some of it still embarrasses me. I am sorry for what I said at the funeral. I knew the will named me, and I wanted you to feel as temporary as I had always believed you were. You were not temporary. I understand if that changes nothing. Brent. I did not answer immediately. An apology did not restore trust. But unlike the apology he could have offered during mediation, this one gained him nothing. 2 weeks later, I wrote back. Brent, it changes one thing. It tells the truth. Maggie. We exchanged no other letters for several months. Then Sophie graduated. Brent and I sat in the same row with an empty seat between us. After the ceremony, he introduced me to a colleague. "This is Maggie," he said, "my dad's wife and business partner. Not companion. Not associate. Not the woman who had taken everything. His father's wife. His business partner. It was not reconciliation, but it was accuracy." Nearly a year later, Brent came to a Saturday workshop. He stood in the back wearing work clothes instead of a suit. He stayed afterward while volunteers stacked chairs. "I have been at the new job 10 months, he said. "Sophie told me. I don't get to make every decision. That may be useful." A faint smile crossed his face. "I used to think Dad's money meant he believed in me." "He did believe in you." "Then why did he keep the debt?" "Because believing in you was not the same as pretending your choices had no cost." Brent looked toward James's photograph on the wall. "I should have understood that sooner." "Yes." He waited. "I don't expect you to trust me." "That is wise. Could we have coffee sometime?" I considered the question. Coffee is not access to the company. It is not forgiveness for everything. And it does not make us a family again by next Tuesday. I know. Do you? I am learning. We had coffee the following month, in a public cafe. Then again, 2 months later. Some conversations were awkward, some ended early. I did not offer him a job, a loan, a key, or a promise. He did not ask. That was how trust began to return, not through one emotional speech, but through the absence of pressure. By then, I understood that dignity rarely returned as a dramatic victory. Sometimes, it was a key that still fit your own front door. Sometimes it was a business opening on Monday, because no one had frightened you into abandoning it. Sometimes it was a young woman calling you grandma in front of everyone. And sometimes it was a man finally recognizing that a woman did not become a stranger merely because she was not related by blood. Brent had told me I would receive nothing. In one narrow sense, he had been correct. James's will did not leave me a special gift. It did not need to. The house was already mine because James and I had made it ours together. My share of the business was already mine because I had invested in it, worked for it, and protected it. My place in James's life was already mine because 17 years of marriage did not require his son's approval. The last folder did not make me powerful. It revealed what had always been true. I had not taken Brent's inheritance. I had stopped allowing him to inherit freedom from his own choices. One evening, after closing the store, I sat on the screened porch with James's old thermos beside me. The maple leaves moved softly in the yard, and the new light glowed above the door. I had finally asked someone to climb the ladder and change it. For years, I thought strength meant carrying every burden quietly so the people I loved would never feel its weight. Now, I knew better. Quiet strength was knowing what belonged to you, what belonged to someone else, and when love required you to set their burden down. Would you have allowed Brent back into your life slowly, or would you have kept the door closed? Share your thoughts and subscribe to Her Quiet Justice for more stories about dignity, truth, and consequences that are earned.